Welcome. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here. I'm taking the opportunity to look at all the different faces. I invite you to turn your video on, if that's possible for you and for the internet connection. Welcome, welcome. I'm Lucette Jaimes. I will be facilitating today and will be also in a dialogue, a conversation with Dominic Stocker from Collective Leadership Institute. Welcome, Dominic. And welcome everyone who is still joining us. I imagine that for the next couple of minutes, we'll have more people joining us. So welcome, welcome. I'd like to just start by sharing a little bit of information about CoCreative and what's happening in this conversation together. And so let me share my screen right now. All right. So for you already who knows us, and for the new people who are going to get to know CoCreative, we actually work and have been working on helping people who don't know each other and sometimes don't even like each other to solve problems that are complex and to create better futures together. We support effective collaboration across sectors. And of course, we do that to create more equitable and ecologically sustainable systems. We do this by designing and supporting collaborative innovation networks and offering capacity building and support to systems leaders doing this work. Why we are here? Well, personally, I have an interest and an engagement in the topic of well-being, thrivability, and life flourishing, which is so connected to aliveness, which we will be exploring more of today. And also, as an organization, CoCreative has been committed to cultivate a community of learning. We really want to share our tools, our insights, our frameworks with everyone, with you who are here, so we can connect, we can learn from each other. We work with amazing people around the world, and we believe that sharing this information is really important for us to be able to do the change we want to see. And we're also exploring some learning relationships with key partners. And one of the main topics that we've been in exploration about has been well-being. We have an inquiry, and is that when we approach the work of collaboration for complex system change, it often focuses on problems, solution, or how to fix a dysfunctional system. And we're holding the question as to what happens when we actually come together to create conditions where we are all thriving and flourishing and happy. And so this really offers a different starting and maybe an ending point for our own work. We will explore that today as well. We decided to host webinars around this inquiry with other partners, and Collective Leadership Institute is one of them. CLI has done a lot of work around patterns of aliveness and will be sharing them with us today. And so let me share the flow that we're going to have for these next 90 minutes. We're going to have a moment to ground and really arrive to connect. Then Dominic will share through a presentation, and we'll have a brief discussion on the topic of aliveness and collective leadership. Then we'll explore aliveness in collaborations through a breakout group and a plenary discussion. And then we'll hear from Dominic a particular example on the application of collective leadership or the collective leadership compass. We'll all together explore implications of this in our work, and then we'll check out and close together. Just a reminder that if you have any technical support need, you can connect directly to Marisela. And also an invitation for you to really be present here as your full whole self. We're all whole human beings. We welcome everyone who is working from home, whatever is there. You know, if you have your children, your spouse, that's welcome. We also welcome participants and colleagues and co-creative friends and clients, and we invite you all to really learn and co-create with us. This is not only an offering that we're giving, but we are co-creating it. And you can share questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll do our best to weave them into the conversation. And we will record this session. We are actually already recording the session, which will last around 90 minutes. We ask that you please tag us in your Twitter post today, and Marisela is sharing the information in the chat. All right. So I want to welcome Dominic Stocker and first say a few words about him. Dominic has convened diverse teams to address pressing sustainability challenges. He's a lead faculty member for educational programs on cross-sector cooperation and facilitates stakeholder dialogues. He has more than 20 years working with different actors in Africa, Asia, Latin America, particularly guiding systems toward graded, results-oriented collaboration. Welcome, Dominic. It's great to have you here. And before we jump into listening to you, I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen and invite us all to mark a threshold so we can start our time more intentionally together. And so if it is okay with you, I'm gonna invite you to take a different perspective, particularly any other, looking at any other different direction that you're used to for a moment. And once you have found that different perspective, I invite you to take a full deep breath. And if it's possible to you, through your exhalation, I invite you to let go whatever you don't need for this moment. And with the inhalation, I invite you to set an intention to be present with our group here and now. And you can take as many breaths as you need to let go and receive. All right, thank you. Now you can come back to the screen and get excited about what's happening next, which is we're gonna check out who is in the room here. And for that, we're gonna use our digital poll tool, Slido. We have 4 questions and Marisela will be sharing it in the chat. We want to you to please share your name. Where are you joining from today? One gift that you are bringing to this time together, and one thing that makes you feel most alive in your life and work. So you just have to click on the link and the questions will be prompted there. And I'll give you some time to answer them. All right. So we can, in the screen, see some of the people who are joining us from these different places. Welcome all. And we have Canary Island, Canada, Bozeman, Palestine, Vancouver, West Virginia, Calgary, Egypt, Singapore, Washington State, Oakland. We can see we have a quite nice spread. All of us are in different parts of the world. And one gift that you're bringing to this time together: curiosity, openness, reverence of aliveness, full participation. Listen with open mind and heart. Calmness, curiosity, presence, listening, my time. Wonderful. Thank you all for bringing all those gifts. It's wonderful that you are sharing them with all of us here. And the next one, we can see our cloud here. The one thing that makes us most feel alive. Collaboration is one of them. And we can see it that is quite big in our group. Contacts with human beings, learning something new, connection, outdoors and justice. Ooh, relationships, also a big one. Contacts with other human beings. There's a lot of connection here as well. It's connection written in different ways. So I think that that's also a big one that we're observing here. Appreciation, people, conversations. Wonderful. Thank you all. And I really would love to now invite Dominic to share also your what makes you feel alive and get us started into the insights you have to share with us. Go ahead, Dominic.
Lizette, it's an immense pleasure to be part of this conversation today. First, I'm really grateful to CoCreative for hosting in such a generous and graceful way with your time, your methodologies, your presence. And then just looking around this room, recognizing that we're coming from so many corners of the world, that we're working in all kinds of different transformation processes at different levels and different stakeholder systems. It's truly a privilege to get to interact with you today. I was the one who listed the Canary Island of La Palma. I live here with my 16-year-old twin sons and wife, and I get to work with the Collective Leadership Institute. I see a couple of colleagues with me here, Douglas in New York, and Mai is over in Cairo, and a couple of other familiar faces. So really grateful that you're spending some time together with all of us today. Lizette, in the Slido poll, noticing this very strong focus on people, on connection, on relationship, these social elements of aliveness seemed like the single biggest cluster. I also noticed someone putting outdoors for this connection to nature, and someone listing justice in terms of causes that enliven us or values that enliven us. So I'd like to offer an input, and we'll make this as interactive as possible with some further polls and breakout groups and so on. I'd also like to appreciate Dr. Petra Kunkel, who's the founder of Collective Leadership Institute, who did really groundbreaking work on patterns of aliveness, including with Sandra Waddock, who I noticed on the call just a moment ago. So gratitude to the thinkers who have done a lot of writing and thinking about these topics, and also the practitioners who are out there doing the work from which we get to learn. So aliveness and collective leadership. So looking at aliveness at the core of collective leadership, and a topic that's going to come up more than once today is this question around what is the relationship between personal aliveness, what makes me feel alive, like the survey, and what helps bring systems to life, full stakeholder systems. How do we enliven our collaboration? So I invite you to reflect on that as we're sharing today. What is that relationship between personal and systems aliveness? So this urge for aliveness, we saw both in nature and with one another. For me, I love, for example, getting outside and going rock climbing with my sons. That is a moment where I get to be in the fresh air, when I get to connect with something physical, when I'm really fully in my body, like we were at the beginning of this webinar with your breathing exercise, Lizette, reminding us that we have bodies carrying around our heads, that we're actually whole human beings with both mind and heart. When I get to go outside and be with my sons, it's connection with them. It's being part of a team that has a shared goal. It's trust in one another, literally having one another's lives in our hands. So this urge for aliveness with nature, with one another, for some people around causes that we care about. Other people will say architecture is something that can inspire, or music is something that inspires, as we had at the beginning of the webinar. At Collective Leadership Institute, we posit, and we've seen this in practice, that collective leadership done well enhances a sense of aliveness both in ourselves and others. And we work hard to encourage a self-awareness around that question of what makes me feel alive and what is my pattern in aliveness? Where do I draw energy? When am I most generative? When am I most creative? When do I also need retreat in order to maintain a sense of aliveness? And noticing, expanding that awareness to those around us, in our families, our neighborhoods, in the teams at work, and our colleagues, and so on. What is it that enlivens them? Why is it that they get up in the morning and go to work? Why do I get up out of bed and go to work? What is it that I care about and want to contribute to? And this leads fundamentally to a shift in the way we can co-create reality together. If we're all really showing respect and we're appreciating the dignity of one another and one another's diverse perspectives, we can come together in new ways that draw out collective intelligence, that draw out the creative ideas that we can experiment with in terms of addressing entrenched challenges that we're all encountering in our work, whether that's from health to social inequities to climate change challenges and so on. And this sense of aliveness, again, definitely connected to the natural world, inspired by the natural world. And there's the whole field of biomimicry that looks at this very, very carefully as well, looking to ecosystems as inspiration also for our social systems. And what we've seen is that for collective leadership to emerge, so leadership that shares responsibility and shares contribution in equal measure, we need to understand which patterns and conditions are creating aliveness, be attuned to those factors that will enliven a collaboration, and ask the question, what is needed now? What is needed now for myself, for the team that I'm a part of, for an initiative, for a system that we seek to change? And what we offer at Collective Leadership Institute, one of our two core tools is the Collective Leadership Compass as entry points for aliveness. So enlivening these different levels that we're talking about. So for some people, the entry point is very much around this question, what inspires us to shape the future collectively? A sense of purpose, a vision. What are the goals? What do we share? What are we striving to achieve? What is this future that we want to create together? For others, it might be around engagement. How can we engage those who need to be involved in our collaboration? How do we build the relationships? How do we build the trust with those that need to be involved, even across great divides, across borders, across cultures, across generations, across sectors, and so on? For others, an entry point is often innovation. What innovative approaches are out there? What needs to be fostered? What are the novel pathways that we can develop and pilot through our collaborations, through our work? Around humanity, how can we touch people's hearts and create meaning? So balancing the analytical mind with the emotive heart, in the sense that we are whole human beings and we show up in these change processes as human beings. And this question around humanity is very much, what do we deeply care about? What do we deeply care about? What are the shared values that we have? What is the meaning that we're trying to create together? Collective intelligence, for me personally, is something that brings much aliveness around leveraging diverse perspectives, expertise, competencies. The challenges we face are urgent and they're complex and require that diverse set of stakeholders around the table. So how can we create spaces in which a culture of dialogue can emerge, in which the ideas that are born of those discussions are greater than any one person or one sector's ideas? And finally, this bigger picture wholeness, how can our work contribute to a larger narrative, a larger sustainability narrative on planet Earth? We are not working in isolation. The work that each of you is doing is potentially mutually supportive and part of a larger movement working toward a regenerative future for this planet, for the community of life on the planet that we call home. And so these questions can be taken at that personal level I mentioned, and they can also be taken at a process or systems level in terms of what is needed now what are my strengths? Where am I developing as an individual? What is needed to continue to enliven a given collaboration and take it to the next level? I'm here, Luzette. I'm going to just briefly share this slide. I think I've really covered a lot of these aspects. These are, again, the 6 dimensions around emotionally compelling goals for future possibilities, or the high quality processes around engagement, creative solutions around innovation, dignity related to humanity, creating meaning together around collective intelligence, and connecting to a larger goal and creating broader impact around wholeness. These can be the entry points for aliveness. I'd like to pause. I'm talking too much, and I'm really curious to hear what others are bringing here. And so based on my description of the collective leadership compass, we'd like to invite you to click on the link in the text chat that Sela just shared. Thank you, Sela. And you'll notice a compass there with the 6 dimensions that I've been describing. So consider for yourself this question of your main strength in the compass currently, today. What is your main strength in enlivening collective leadership in your community, in the work that you do in your neighborhood? So go ahead and move those circles, they're color-coded circles there, to the dimension that is your current strength. And we'll see what kind of pattern emerges here for our group of 30 individuals. Yeah, I'll pull that one up to share as well. A moment. Okay, I see some things moving, and connect to these dimensions in the way that's appropriate for you. There's no right or wrong definition for these different entry points to aliveness. We encourage that the compass is adapted to different contexts and different people. So thanks for jumping in here. Nice. So noticing quite a strong presence around future possibilities, as well as collective intelligence. The pattern is also showing quite a few people in humanity and wholeness, followed by innovation and engagement. What can be interesting is to do assessments like this in your own team or in your own collaboration ecosystem to see where the respective strengths might lie. So thanks for having participated there in glancing at our pattern initially. I would pause here for a moment and see if we have an opportunity for discussion, Lizette.
Yeah, that would be great.
A few minutes. Yeah, that would be great.
If there are any questions or comments and reactions, it would be great to hear.
Yeah, the reactions, questions, or anything that's resonating with you, or feel free to link anything I've shared to your own experience, or adapt anything I've shared to your own experience.
And what we hear from somebody, something that I can bring up is from the work that we do with CoCreative in setting up and creating networks for systems change, we usually use a framework of 4 agendas that include connecting, aligning, learning, and making. And when we're connecting, there is this, sense of belonging, relationship building that connects with what we have mentioned earlier, that are things that give us aliveness. And then when we are working on the alignment agenda, then there's usually, when we're finding a shared intent and shared purpose, there's something, that moment where you feel that you're connecting with something larger than yourself. And so it's kind of like that connection with spirit and connection. The connection has the sense of heart and spirit, and then the learning brings the head, and the making brings the hand. So this model is really kind of like the entire human being being fully alive in the process of collaboration. So that framework reminded me also of this framework we use of full wholeness in the creating this collaboration for system change and in relationship with others.
There's a lot of complementarity. I have actually a specific question that came to mind. Most all of you moved one of those circles to a dimension. I would love to hear why. So if one or two of you could give an example of how collective intelligence or innovation or engagement show up for you. How do those show up? How do you bring aliveness to collaborations through that particular dimension? It would be really interesting to hear. And don't be shy. There's no right or wrong here. All right, let's go for future possibilities. I'm comfortable with silence, but let's go for future possibilities and see. And we had quite a few people there.
Can you repeat the question, Dominic?
Yeah, the question is, share an example of how you bring aliveness into collaborations through the dimension that you indicated around the compass. There we go. Bonnie, go ahead.
I'll try to get things going. I'm going to try. I'm not exactly sure what's being asked either, but I'll try. So I selected collective intelligence. So I would say an example of that is I think about how I engage with folks when we're working collectively. And because my background is engineering, I approach things very much with facts and logic and give me the data, right? So I tend to appeal to others from that dimension. And then when I think about my work now, I'm not working in engineering, but I'm working in the social justice space. I still bring that same approach. I lean on our collective intelligence by what am I bringing in my understanding? What is someone else bringing in their understanding and their shifting perhaps between facts and perception at that point, but their lived experience coming with it as a form of facts as well, right? So that's why I was drawn to that particular dimension.
Thanks, Bonnie. That's a lovely answer, a lovely response to the question. Each of us will do this in different ways. Each of us will leverage these different dimensions in different ways to enliven the work that we do. Is there one more person? Bonnie's broken the ice.
I could jump in. I wasn't able to move a dot. I'm on my phone and it wouldn't let me, but I also am not quite going to answer your question. I just want to say that I'm really, this really is resonating with me. I call the work that I do inclusive leadership coaching. And mostly what I do, though, is coach leaders around their fear of aliveness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And what I've noticed, I started out doing work in like anti-oppression, anti-racism. And what I've come to notice is that all oppressive practices that I can find and all work that's being done to oppress people is rooted in a fear of aliveness that we all have access to. And for me, I've been Googling who else is doing work on aliveness just to try to tap into the kind of the collective intelligence that's being gathered. But I'm just noticing, like, I appreciate having frameworks that can help us demystify what's going on. Because I think part of what gets scary for folks, especially folks in leadership whose job is to maintain the stability and the functionality of an organization, is change is destabilizing things, and that can be scary. Impermanence is a thing that continues to scare human beings. So I'm just really appreciating this framework, and I'm so excited to learn more about the work that all of you are doing. Oh yeah, it feels the possibilities for collaboration and for continued learning feel very alive to me. So just I'm really excited to be here with all of you.
All right. Fantastic, Leanne. I appreciate that comment. And our approach is definitely an appreciative approach where we look to build on existing strengths. So we like to ask questions like, what's working and how might we build on that? Or what are your strengths in leading collectively? How can we leverage those and so on? And maybe I'll continue here with sort of a reflection further on this idea of awareness, also at these different levels, that what we're trying to promote is stewarding aliveness at a systems level through collective leadership. We feel that there's a leadership paradigm shift that's happening away from some of these more conventional forms to more collective forms. And CoCreative is part of that shift. And many organizations represented here on this call, I think we all see that that leadership needs to change in order for us to effectively address the challenges we face. And in doing that, stewarding aliveness in systems depends on this individual level awareness. So increasing awareness of patterns in ourselves that enhance aliveness. It also, related to the systems in which we exist. We're also trying to organize change processes in a way that they enhance aliveness. So this question of sort of where are we, what is needed now? You can use the compass to assess your collaboration ecosystem at a given moment and say, here we seem to be very strong, here we could develop further, let's work toward that. And that links to this broader collaboration ecosystem idea. These can be organizations, they can be initiatives, they're whole stakeholder systems. And we're modeling interactions that continuously contribute to this aliveness in what is hopefully a virtuous cycle. So Lizette and I had the idea that we would have a small group discussion so that you can get into groups of 3 or 4 people each. And we care about connection. This is part of aliveness. So we're going to make sure this webinar feels alive. So share your name and then share some examples around this question. When have you been part of a collaboration that felt in the past or still feels alive if it's ongoing? And then reflect on what qualities were present that helped enliven the collaboration. We'll set the rooms for 10 minutes, please. And please, of course, share speaking time with the others in the room. Sela, could you help me set up the rooms, please?
Yep, they are ready.
Okay. Enjoy this exchange. And the question Sela has kindly also pasted in the chat for your reference. All right. Welcome back from your breakout sessions. It might be unusual for a webinar setting to be this interactive, but we hope you are enjoying it and that you could connect a little bit with your group mates and that you got to share some inspiring collaborations and think about these qualities that were present. We've prepared another poll to gather results from this conversation. And so Sela has just shared the link in the text chat. If you could click there, you'll find 3 questions on your collaboration. What was or is the topic of your collaboration? Where was it implemented? And then we're very interested to see the results for the 3rd question in terms of the qualities that were present that helped enliven the collaboration. Sometimes these are things that are a little hard to analyze, but things that you might feel or that you might sense, where you say, and when you're part of a team that really feels purposeful and aligned and working together in a good way. There might just be a feeling that you carry with you. And those kinds of qualities that are present there could be listed for those qualities that enliven some of these collaborations. So take a moment there and we'll see what results come in.
Where's the link? Is it above?
The link is in the text chat. So Sela has pasted the link where it says Slido, and then she's also has the questions repeated there.
Can I ask a question, Dominic?
Yeah,
For
please.
the qualities, are you looking for like a one-word entry or several, or I'm just curious how much I should write in there?
It's going to produce a word cloud. So go ahead, but please, as much detail as you like. I'd rather not miss anything.
I see. Thank
So
you.
go ahead, Mariana. If it's 3, 4, 5, go ahead and list them. That's totally fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm glad to share as people continue to contribute here. We've got stuff coming in, responses coming in.
All right, let's see what people are working on. So here we have some healthy governance in terms of topics. Also someone reflecting on humanity, where they feel most alive, connecting with others authentically. Working on curricula for summer camp for young people, nice. Also early childhood work, gender equality in STEM, many of you working in education.
Hey, Dominic, I just want to note we still have a handful of people finishing.
Yeah. Nice. I'm just glad to see the diversity that's already here. From very focused also to broader systems changes and transformation roadmaps, healthy relationships and group identity, addressing humanitarian and peace building efforts, water resilience, nice. Working with nonprofit leaders. These are really inspiring areas of work. Thank you for sharing these. Western conservation and indigenous stewardship. All right. I wonder, Sela, if we could also see where these collaborations are taking place. BC, I'm going to guess British Columbia. Across different regions of Alaska, Washington, Canada, Oregon. We have a strong Northwest contingent. Or from Canada's perspective, I guess that would be a Southwest contingent. Cultural change via leadership development. Nice. Let's see some of these other locations like California and Montana, Tunisia. Fantastic, working globally. More work across the United States. Work specifically focused on institutions, Montana community. Nice. Working in different systems and community colleges, rural communities, excellent. So I'm curious to see then what we have for qualities that were present, because this is where we're looking for patterns. So my contention would be that these qualities could apply to almost any of the projects or initiatives that we just heard about. So let's have a look at these. And what I would invite you to do as you're looking at them, you can read them as well as I can, is to think about how they might connect back to some of these dimensions that you were just hearing about. Look at these words. I'd like, for an easy example, around shared commitment, right in the middle. That's something that we usually link to engagement in terms of high quality engagement processes, building commitment for implementation. Do others see that? You can feel free to open your microphone. Do others see any connections between the collective leadership compass as you're understanding it currently and some of the qualities that you see here on the screen?
Dominic, something to highlight here is how some of these qualities enliven collaboration, and so how also collaboration can help cultivate some of these qualities. So it's this interconnection that have this cycle. And also to bring up again when we work on, when I see this shared commitment, it really reminds me of the work when we do share intent with the networks that we're working with, and how when the entire collaborative really taps into that, which really gives them energy to move forward and to become that intent, it feels like it gives life to the network and to the work that is to be done.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think, Lizette, that's really the sweet spot that we would be going for, is when we can show up as our full selves in a way that's not exhausting, in a way that doesn't lead to burnout. So how can we bring aliveness into these processes? We put our energy, effort, our time into this work, and how can those collaborations also bring about further aliveness for those of us practitioners here who are committing themselves to this work? Thank you. We welcome other comments. We proved to you earlier that we're willing to wait for them. Are there any other connections that people are seeing?
Dominic, this is Robert. I'll share. I'd say, just from my own experience in this, I kind of saw the thread, which is around taking action with, as it says here, sort of solutions, action, practical solutions. And I think what I appreciate is the aliveness that happens when a collaborative can actually get into action out in the world and actually start learning. There's vulnerability there, to kind of try an idea out, see what happens, see how it actually works. And I've heard recently this term, co-blaboration, where a collaborative spends too much time talking and not enough time actually taking action and getting out into the real world. And that's also, I'd say, the flip sides can be true too. Sometimes action is a way to avoid aliveness and authenticity in some ways, where you're not really dealing with real issues. But my sense too is that if you stick with the action long enough, you'll see if you're really doing something real and authentic and meaningful, or it's just kind of scratching the surface. And I'll say, frankly, in our groups, we've seen both. We've seen real transformative things, and actually things that are a little bit like, that wasn't really that much of a difference maker.
Okay. Thanks for your honesty, Robert. That's really appreciated. It makes me think about a couple of ideas. This idea of, on the broader level, how can we narrate our vision into reality? So these stories that we tell that are bringing about transformation, how do we narrate that vision? How do we tell the stories until they're real? And then the other piece about vulnerability, a couple of ingredients to me are, in these teams, in these networks, in these movements, commitment to one another and commitment to learning through complexity. And if we have those two things, if we have the relationships and we realize, we know that we're going to make missteps along the way, that's part of navigating complexity, that we're kind to ourselves and to one another and say, instead of putting energy into lots of finger pointing, say, there we go. That looked like a misstep. How do we learn from that and adapt as we go forward? Learning our way through complexity. Lovely. Lizette, I'm looking at the time. I'm enjoying this conversation just a little bit too much. So I believe I'm meant to move on at this time with an example. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. Our blue future.
Okay, nice. All right. So let's see if I can pull up this slide. All right. So currently, and in fact, alongside my colleagues Douglas and Mai, who are on this call, CLI gets to support a transformation network, an emerging transformation network called Our Blue Future in the Western Indian Ocean region. These are 10 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa that border on or are in the Indian Ocean. And together, they're seeking to enliven a transformation network across that region that's focused on the vision of an inclusive and sustainable blue economy. I think Sela has a link to the website, so please feel free to check that out. This is a quote straight from the website that Our Blue Future is a multi-stakeholder alliance. We're involving public sector, private sector, coastal communities. There are about 65 million people that live right along the Western Indian Ocean and are impacted positively or negatively by that relationship to the ocean, that proximity. Like I said, this is about an inclusive and sustainable blue economy, bringing together diverse stakeholders and working toward that shared vision of a healthy, prosperous, and resilient future for the region's communities, businesses, and natural habitats. And in these efforts, we define a transformation network generally as being built around future narratives that inspire us on an emotional level, that connect to a sense of care and value, and yet remains plural enough to acknowledge different approaches. So the decentralized aspects of allowing for different strategies to flourish across the network is really important. There are different ways to achieve a shared vision. Transformation networks are multi-level, they're multi-stakeholder. We have here collaborations that are more regional in terms of communities of practice. We also have transboundary and national and local level initiatives that are emerging. And the idea, of course, is that we can achieve wider impact for a shared purpose that we hold. In this case, Our Blue Future is being implemented as structured at these 3 different levels. This is not meant to be hierarchical. I would encourage you to look more broadly at this, at the cloud around the outside. We've succeeded in establishing these governance bodies in terms of secretariat, steering team, and task teams. And we have emerging innovation teams, and these are around specific sectors in the sustainable blue economy. It can be fishing, coastal communities, we have circular economy, and so on, are some of these innovation teams that are taking up specific areas, building communities of practice, looking for opportunities for specific partnerships, projects, champions that would be part of this all-encompassing transformation network. You see some of the other examples around the outside there. Now, one way in which CLI is supporting is with process stewardship. And so the dialogic change model you see there, the blue snail, is our other core methodology, a process methodology. And without going into too much depth, I want to point out that we integrate the collective leadership compass as a navigating tool into the dialogic change model, which represents the journey. So the compass helps us navigate that journey. And what we did in this case with those core teams that I described, we did a number of different assessments. The first one, November 2021 with the compass, and then in February 2022. And we chose those moments because one was very early on as more of a baseline measure of aliveness in this transformation network. And another one after we'd gone through a rigorous and extensive phase of exploring and engaging. We're creating resonance, making sure we understand the context, building different containers or informal core teams for change. We had another compass assessment. And as with any assessment, we do an assessment so that we can then adapt planning, we can adapt course and make sure that we're answering that question of what are our strengths, where could we develop, what is needed next to enliven our collaboration. And so what you see around future possibilities, you can see on the inside, there's a smaller spider diagram moving outward to a bigger spider diagram. This is a mapping of what are called the network enablers. The compass has multiple lenses from individual all the way up to systems. And the network enablers that you see around the outside are related to the dimensions that you just heard about, but go into then a bit more detail. And so what you can see from this assessment is that there's an increasing amount of aliveness, if we're trying to measure this or quantify this in some way in this transformation network, that we can point to areas of overall strength, like purpose clarity or inclusivity. But we can also notice areas where things might be slipping just a bit or are a bit lower, where they've decreased or fallen back. In fact, members pointed out member connectivity. They felt as we were growing, they pointed out, I don't feel quite as connected as I did when we used to be a smaller core set of actors. So some growing pains were involved, and that's perfectly normal. And so the core question that we then ask is, how can we as a team or as core teams continue to leverage our strengths to enliven this collaboration? And as an overview, we could see we had a lot to leverage around future possibilities. Those were strengths. Humanity was a big strength for us around appreciative approaches and balancing interests of network members. And then structured dialogue and getting some of our first governance structures in place. So we were able to launch our Blue Future later the same year. So this was October 2022 at a marine science conference in South Africa. And that has further enlivened the initiative, and it continues to expand and to get more and more members going forward. I think let me pause here for a moment, Lizette, and just offer that as one example. So we're moving from the quick compass pattern of the whole group that we saw to we can apply this in a quantitative way as well. It's still subjective. You're still asking core teams to do these assessments from their own perspectives, but we found it very useful for guiding the onward process of our work of building on strengths and addressing some of our development areas. Open to questions or comments on that. And I encourage you to have a look at the website. In the 5 minutes I have to present this, I can barely scratch the surface. Yeah, Douglas.
Sorry, just the mute button was gone for me for a second. Thanks for this introduction. I get to work with Dominic, and also I get to work with the Collective Leadership Compass a lot. And one of the things that's just sort of popping up for me, which I like to say when I'm explaining the Collective Leadership Compass, is that for a collaboration system that starts to practice building collaboration ecosystems using the Collective Leadership Compass, it offers a language, it offers a shared language for understanding the patterns in a collaboration system. And then for having subjective discussions on how those can be used from a diagnostic perspective to also a planning perspective. So having and creating a shared collaboration language around these different dimensions and aspects is super useful. I'll leave it there. Out.
Yeah. And it ends up making things more efficient when people have that shared language that Douglas is talking about. The conversations are tighter around what might be needed for a given collaboration to move forward at a certain point. Thanks. Lizette, if you like, we could turn to implications for people's work if that's welcome.
I think that would be great. Let's move ahead, and we actually are going to do this again through Slido. We have 2 questions regarding the implications of everything that we've shared so far in our work, and Cela is putting the information in the chat. The first question is around how might a focus on aliveness make a difference in your leadership? And the second question is around how might the compass be applied to help further enliven your future collaborations from individual to system? So we're going to give you some time to share your answers. And I can see some people still writing, so I'm going to wait a little bit to go over the answers. All right, so regarding the focus on aliveness, how the focus on aliveness can make a difference in your leadership, we have different answers, including that stakeholders are emotionally connected to the purpose, keep shared values in mind, to help find aliveness, fit for others, focus on energy, Where are we drawing our energy from? Giving our attention to what is depleting us. Integration and wholeness. Also, the help that this has for the team and ourselves as gauges of aliveness, and is better than other tools for assessing networks. This also helps encourage me and others to show up in their full humanity. And using the question, what is needed now to make meaningful adjustments to our work as we do? It's a more holistic way of thinking, doing, and being. Staff retention, greater motivation, appreciation, shared ownership of projects, more motivated participants and leaders. I would bring humanity into conversations more. That's great. And engagement of those involved in meaningful ways to them, and also reduce burnout. Actually, I want to go back to the burnout later. I have some questions for you, Dominic. Can we go to the next question, please? Great. So how might the compass be applied to help further enliven your future collaborations from individuals to system? So in some of the answers, we find that the compass can be applied on system level to check for synergies and entry points of collaboration. Good holistic approach, a good visual, aligns us for action around clear goals, use as an assessment and planning support tool, assess presence of collective leadership, strengths in team, and build of those together, help team become aware of our pattern at a given moment. The compass tool will help the more data-driven business types that I work with and accept the concepts of aliveness, both assessing and intervening. Also identification of needs, devising best ways to respond to these needs and check progress would help personally be a productive agent within a collaboration system. Not sure yet. I think if everyone feels alive and connected, system process change. Also build confidence, share language, and build leadership. I would like to ask if anyone who has shared some of these comments here would like to open up the microphone and share more how this compass can be applied in your collaborations. Bree, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I definitely need to invest more time in understanding the compass. I feel like this is definitely a new tool that's just been introduced, so I wish that I had a greater understanding of it to more accurately comment. But from the outside, I can see that it helps to understand the differences of how people show up. And through understanding the differences of that, it allows us to better lead to meet others' individual needs and their experience within those differences. And I think that that helps further collaboration because understanding builds trust and then everything just takes off from there.
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, that's one of the things that is so important for us when we are working with collaborations. Begin from a common understanding of the systems that we're working with. So having frameworks and tools that allows us to deepen our understanding of what we are seeing that has different and diverse perspectives is really helpful. Thank you, Bree. Miriam, go ahead.
It's more of a question from my side, if you don't mind. Dominic, I was wondering, and maybe others also can input, how much you have used this compass tool to help network become more efficient and more strategic and so on, and more effective in the way they're working as compared to formal institutions, and how much institutions are willing, to have this aliveness within them, because they might not be so much keen about change and this way of thinking. So thank you for your inputs.
Miriam, thanks for your question. Working at the institutional level is something that CLI has done. I'm thinking of a specific example actually in Egypt, where Douglas and I were involved with the electricity regulatory agency, for example, very hierarchical, very stuck, wasn't really playing its role in the energy sector. And we were able to support, we've built collective leadership capacity among a core set of individuals across departments in the institution and certified them as collective leadership specialists. And they, even through a chairman coming in who was not supportive of the process, that collective leadership spirit continued to thrive in that regulatory agency of all places, and made it until the next chair came in who was more supportive, and then it could flourish even more. We like to then work not just with one institution, but whole stakeholder systems. And so in that case, we would look to other actors in the energy sector and try to engage them in broader transformation. So that's the one piece, and that's what we would call a collaboration ecosystem. It's usually a multi-stakeholder ecosystem that has numerous actors working toward a shared goal. The work on networks can happen at very different scales. We have our own community of practice network among the specialists that I mentioned, 350 around the world, who continue to support one another and learn and exchange on applying the tools that we teach, all the way up to this 10-country transformation network that I was just describing. And so when the need arises, we can also develop a new lens in the compass. We don't have a lens for communities of practice. And currently we're making an effort to say, what are the factors the factors that could enliven communities of practice? That feels like an important space for practitioners like ourselves to go for support, so that we can maintain our sense of aliveness. So I hope that's helpful. We're working around the world with various kinds of networks, including with CoCreative on a social impact network in the Global South. That's a really fulfilling partnership currently that I'm sure you'll hear more about as it goes public.
Thank you, Dominic. Megan, and then Ross.
Just resonating with this first speaker, a lot of this is pretty new to me too, so I'm just kind of wrapping my head around a lot of what's being shared. But I think one area that I've just really been wrestling with over the past couple years is the work that's been happening in our area in terms of the complexity that's been being taken on, where originally things felt more contained. And as the complexity has expanded, partnerships recognizing, I think, their own aliveness to each other and being able to share and understand without getting too far in the weeds of complexity science and all of that they don't have the capacity or bandwidth, or should have the bandwidth to have to get into. And so this to me also helps to do that in a way that is approachable and holistic and doable for a whole community that's already doing the work to approach. And so that's where I'm kind of feeling like there's some light bulbs going off in terms of thinking about how are we working together and how do we make sure we're intentional and how are we alive together are some of the things that are kind of coming together for me today. So but I also realize I may not be very articulate right now either, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Oh, it's great. I found lots of resonance in your comment. Thank you. All right, Ross, go ahead.
One of the things I love about this framework is it's very holistic. And I often think, oh, that's a word that we throw around, but we don't really stop to think about. But it means like showing up as whole people, working on whole systems in a way that feels full and rich and like it's addressing all the parts of ourselves, spirits, hearts, minds, hands, feet, everything. And so like I think when we work this way and use frameworks like this, it invites us to be fully in it together. And it really strikes me because we don't do at CoCreative, we don't do institution level work anymore. But we had this folks from this employee-owned company showing up at our trainings, and there were more people showing up. And then at some point we reached out to these people because the founder is a real like international expert on worker ownership, and we were exploring how we do worker ownership at CoCreative. So we get on the call, my colleague Heather Equinas and I, with their two of their leadership team, and we say, we so appreciate that that you're willing to spend the time with us to understand how we can do employee ownership, worker ownership well. And they start laughing and they say, are you kidding us? The way we work is because of CoCreative. So I think this is so infectious when we create these frameworks that enable us to show up as whole people and be whole institutions, whole organizations, have healthy, thriving whole systems. Like, it's really attractive. People want more of it.
Thank you, Ross. Yeah, I agree. I think that there is such there has been such a disconnection, cultivation of our disconnection from ourselves, from nature, from others, through the building structures that invite us and or force us to be more effective and create, problems instead of solutions, and really reclaiming our ability to be ourselves in whatever way it is, and to somehow create processes through which and frameworks through which we are able to really hold our very beautiful differences and find common ground so we can create the futures we do want to see that benefit everyone, not only few ones. It's just so called for. And what I really appreciate about this framework is that is simple enough, but strong enough to invite me to identify with these patterns that I can feel in myself, and I can see how can build in a network of the people that I'm working in my team, in my network, etc. So it's just powerful. And Dominic, I want to bring up an earlier question that we had that we haven't answered yet, and it's around some words around the concept of aliveness and what has led the organization to use that concept, and also if there are other language that you use around that can inspire others in the topic.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. CLI has put aliveness at the center of everything we do. Luzette, in part for the reasons you just explained, and that Russ was also talking about, and others. It allows people to show up in their full humanity. And it makes me think of Joanna Macy's seed pods of the future. So how these patterns are fractals. And no matter what scale, we can model patterns or fractals of interaction that are the future. We can already start to build this future that we want to see. In fact, I think we have to. The processes need to embody that aliveness that we so want for the whole community of life. And so with different terms for aliveness, in some communities, we can just say love, that this is centrally, it's about love. And in other places, maybe with private sector, we might talk about vitality. And so, that can land perhaps a little in a different way. Luzette, I think you mentioned well-being, thriving. These are words that circle around the same idea. I hope that responds well to the question.
Thank you. And actually, I have a comment. Earlier today, we had a conversation about this topic, and one of the participants was from Indonesia. And when we were defining aliveness, he said that in his language, aliveness actually was expressed as being in nature. So just to understand, also in other contexts, in other cultures and ways of understanding reality, this may mean just being in nature. Okay, Mariana, go ahead.
Thank you, Lucette. Thank you, Dominic. Just want to express gratitude and also deep resonance for this approach. And I work at this intersection of conservation and indigenous peoples, and so it's a key part of what we do, even if we don't do it explicitly. And also coming at this from a network weaving perspective, a process facilitation perspective and a leadership development perspective. But it's interesting because I guess my question is a little, I don't know if incisive, but I'm curious as you gave the example of the blue future. And I actually think that your framework is really complex. It has a lot in it. And as I see you build that into this beautiful caracol conch, I don't know how you say it in English. I'm curious about how your process of integrating these two frameworks of, I guess, moving forward a multi-stakeholder process and the leadership compass, the aliveness compass. How does that increase or decrease aliveness? I mean, I'm just curious if like the complexity, the intellectualization, the measurement. I'm kind of, as a network manager, I'm kind of in love as to how you measured, how you're measuring these components in the system, and at the same time, I'm just curious if moving through this in the multi-stakeholder process, it has been hard, and in trying to organize this and moving the work forward, has that brought aliveness down? Is what I'm asking, right? In like, because it is at a level kind of cognitive, and something that is lacking for me here is actually seeing your practices.
Yeah.
What are the things that you are enacting in each of these components that make this multi-stakeholder alliance like thrive in each of these areas? I don't know if that came through.
So, I mean, inherently, Mariana, the work we're doing is meaningful because it's complex, and we're not taking on the small challenges, right? This is hard work. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you about that. All of you know that it's challenging work to bring together diverse actors who, as CoCreative says, sometimes don't like one another, don't want to be at the same table. How do you do that in a productive way? So the work is complex. That's not going to disappear. And I, like you, I like to geek out about the spider diagrams and noticing incremental increases or decreases, and that's fun. But the process for creating the spider diagram is much more important than the product. So it's about relation, connection, and a shared language, like Douglas was talking about. Those assessments were like the dialogue around having those assessments was really important for people to continue to build a shared language around leading collectively and enlivening their initiative, and also to connect and make sure there's a shared understanding. So if in a given conversation, someone is rating something really high, it's just a number, but if they rate it high and someone else is rating it low, you have a conversation about why. Say, I hadn't seen it from that perspective before, or okay, let's have a compromise here because both of those things are true. And so it's the dialogue that leads up to an assessment like that is, I would say, more important than the actual product. But the product is useful in that you can visually see progress, you can visually see where you might be slipping, and you can do something about it. Then that core group can make decisions differently in an informed way that says, let's continue to enliven this. So it might be hard, but in general, aliveness is increasing. If we're careful about it, we're building in moments for reflection and retreat to keep our generative energies in balance.
Thank you, Dominic. And thank you, everyone, for your sharings. I actually want to use your comment, Dominic, as a segue for a few reflections before our closing. And is that when we are looking at bringing aliveness or the concept of thrivability or flourishing, that may actually lead us to possibility in the creation and in the way that we actually show up, in the way we do systems, in the quality of the relationships that we build, in the goals that we set ourselves to achieve. And so there is a shift of how we're living our life experience that can deeply impact the end result of our work, basically. And so that's why using this framework is so interesting and useful for our collaborations as well. I also noticed that this work applies at several levels, individuals, teams, organizations, ecosystems. And we heard how self-awareness and just awareness in general is so important, because systems are people. People are systems, and all of them are connected, and whatever changes at the individual level has a rippling effect in our teams, in our organizations, in our ecosystems, and vice versa. So creating and deepening our awareness at all those levels has, again, a fundamental impact in the quality of how we interact with one another, we build our relationships, we build our systems, and we set up our strategies, our intentions, and the things that we start to value, and so on. And also, what I want to bring to our attention is that collective leadership really help us get that sense of aliveness in our work, so we can be resourced, and at the same time we can have other resources like being in nature, like having great connection with others, that fit our ability to feel alive, so we can dedicate our efforts and our resources to our collaborations. So it's a connection, it's a cycle between my own inner work, my outer work at the individual, team, organization, and ecosystem levels. And so with this, I realized I spoke a lot, and I just want to thank you, Dominic, for sharing such powerful methodology and your experience with it. We're grateful to you, and we also like to provide this webinar for free, and want to say thank you to all who contributed donations for Multicultural Bridge, a women and minority-led grassroots nonprofit based in Western Massachusetts that is dedicated to advancing equity and justice by promoting cultural competence, positive psychology, and mutual understanding and acceptance. Thank you to Dominic and CLI for introducing us to this wonderful organization. So I'm gonna pass it to you, Dominic, for 30 seconds if you want to share your resources and any additional insight.
So Sella's going to paste a couple of links in the text chat. For those of you who want to go deeper into the Compass, we have an online Compass app that's free that you can sign up for. You can follow the links in the text chat. You can do individual level assessments, system, process, quality assessments are here. So enjoy that. And also, along with Petra Kunkel I mentioned, Elisabeth Kuhn, with Douglas, we published Leading Transformative Change collectively a couple of years ago with Routledge. It's open access, and it's precisely for practitioners like you. So have a look. There's lots of cases. The Compass, the dialogic change model are further described, and lots of other good tools. Thanks again to Lizette, to you, and to the whole CoCreative team. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Dominic. And also on our site from CoCreative, we have upcoming webinars and resources. And in a few days, you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording of today's session and a copy of the slide deck and all the wisdom that you shared in Slido. We're copying that also in the chat. Many of the tools we referenced today are also available at collectiveleadership.de. And we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter to learn about our future webinar opportunities. The next one is on June the 1st on navigating cultural diversity in pursuit of collective wellness. And if you want to learn more about collaborative innovation and our approach to wicked problems, we have a full course coming up in May and October, just added, and we also have a facilitating multi-stakeholder collaboration in July. So hopefully we'll have all those resources in the chat that are there. And to close, I'm just gonna invite you all to unmute yourself and just share goodbye in your native language, or a good intention for the people who are still here together. So when I say 3, okay? 1, 2, 3, unmute.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.